not mine, but
No.
not mine. But I do want to talk about, because everybody here knows it, and it is one of the great films of all time, Rebel Without a Cause,
Yes.
which Nicca did not see until she was 34 years old. Why?
Well, James Dean in that red jacket and that poster for Rebel Without a Cause was everywhere. When I was growing up, I grew up, near Hollywood, and we used to hang out on Hollywood Boulevard. So in like all the the stores that sold
Memorabilia.
the stores that sold the
Souvenir shops,
the
junk
souvenirs,
shops.
yeah, and the head shops on Hollywood Boulevard in the 70s. They'd always have the poster of James Dean, and of course at the Chinese theater, Grauman's Chinese, and it was like, well, there's my father's name, and my father's name is everywhere. He's everywhere, but he's not here. And so Rebel Without a Cause to me represented the father that was everywhere but not here. And
Almost the absence of your father.
absolutely, yeah. And so I didn't see it till I was 34, and do you want to know what led me to see it?
Yes, I
Okay.
do.
So I was at the New School, and I had just started taking film classes, and this teacher I had, I wouldn't take any classes where the teachers were going to talk about my father's films. And
You didn't want that.
no, I didn't want that. I wanted to learn about movies, but not my father's at that time. And so a professor of mine started talking about my father's movies and how my father thought that the family was a ball and chain, and he referenced Rebel Without a Cause. And so I wanted to prove my professor wrong. And so then MoMA was having a screening of Rebel, and so I called the museum and asked if I could get tickets. And I'd never done anything like this in my life before. I feel like until that point I kept myself a secret from, I kept my father and the legacy a secret. And so when I called MoMA, it was sort of like coming out of the closet, and I was really surprised. They gave me 2 tickets for me and Jesse, and I was so surprised.
You'd never traded on your father's name before that?
No, I never traded on my father's name before then, and so it was a rainy Friday night, and I thought, no one's gonna be at this old movie, But lo and behold, the theater was packed. People were sitting in the aisles, and I remember standing in line to get into the theater and just being so proud of my father. And gosh, I mean, to make a movie that 50 years later, people are like wanting to go out on a rainy, cold night and sit in an aisle and watch the movie. Like, what an accomplishment!
And they would still do it.
They still do it.
Still do it.
They
yeah.
still do it. I mean, and not just for that movie.
Not just for that, but that's the famous one. That's the big one.
the famous one.
What was your attitude when you saw the film? What did you think of it?
I just loved it. It was. I loved the scene in the mansion when Salminio, Natalie Wood, and James Dean are in the mansion, and they're creating their own family for themselves. It reminded me of when I was a punk rocker, and we would live in these crash pads in Hollywood, and we made our own family, and so it reminded me of that these kids that my dad helped to shape and create and tell the story of were like my friends and I, disenfranchised.
You felt the connection between the kids that had no place, or felt they had no place.
Absolutely, yeah. And so that made me feel closer to my father.
Seeing that movie.
Yeah.
Could you feel the presence of your father in the film?
Yes. Yes, I did, and I felt him that night in the theater too, you know. But yeah, I think, you know, he didn't have a really good childhood. You know, his father was an alcoholic, and his father was like the town drunk in La Crosse, and he would go and pick his father up from the bars and have to bring him home so that kids could eat dinner. You know, he didn't have a good time when he was a kid either.
So maybe the creation of that family in the mansion was a projection of his own wishes as well as the characters within the film, of finding a family.
I think that my father found families on film sets. I think that that's where he was comfortable having a family. He wasn't comfortable having a real being with his blood family, but I think that he created families on the film set, and he definitely created a family feeling with the actors in Rebel Without a Cause, because I talked to quite a few of them, and he really made them feel important. And I remember Corey Allen, you know, the actor Corey Allen, he said...
Buzz Gunderson.
Yes. He said that he wanted to be like James Dean, and they all wanted to be like James Dean. And my dad took Corey Allen aside and said, I don't want you to be James Dean. I want you to be you.
That was very empowering.
It
Yeah,
was very
sure,
empowering.